I'm thrilled to move on to this next session, why innovation is necessary to building thriving communities. And the session is going to be moderated by Katherine Oliver, Principal at Bloomberg Associates. We have a fantastic and global panel for this session. So a very warm welcome to you all. And Katherine, over to you.
Thank you, Juliet. And yeah, I think we're celebrating International Women's Day a little early. I'm so proud to be joined by my esteemed friends and colleagues from Milan and New York City. I'm Katherine Oliver and really thrilled to be here. It was 10 years ago that Mayor Bloomberg, my boss, appointed the first ever Chief Digital Officer in government anywhere. And she's with us today, Rachel Haot. Bloomberg Associates is an international pro bono consultancy for cities created by Mike Bloomberg, and we're advising global mayors on good government strategies. And Milan Mayor Beppe Sala is a businessman turned mayor who recruited our other panelist, Roberta Cocco, who's had a successful career at Microsoft in the private sector. And Mayor Sala lured her back to her home country to help his administration innovate and employ digital strategies. And we're pleased to have both of these ladies joining us today. In our work at Bloomberg Associates with global cities, we've found that there is a desire to use technology now more than ever to address some of the needs of citizens and business and tourists in cities. And we've learned a lot of lessons over the years of the importance of using technology to generate efficiencies. My boss, Mike Bloomberg, has always said, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And he's very data driven. And when he was mayor of the city of New York after 9/11, and we were challenged with making the city safe, but also making the city an attractive place to do business, we really needed to analyze what were the core challenges for the city. And we needed to measure them, and we needed to address them strategically. And so that was what informed our approach to exploring how to use technology in government and led us to creating the position of Chief Digital Officer. Rachel, when you reflect on your early days in the role of the Chief Digital Officer in New York, I remember that we outlined a strategy that was to create a digital roadmap for the city. And it was really important to reach out to the community and to learn and to talk about your approach. And you went on a 90-day listening tour. And I think that the essence of that, I seem to remember, was that you said it was so important to create trust with the people that you were working with and for. So maybe share some early reflections of lessons learned there.
As part of this incredible event, and excited to hear more from Roberta. You know, as you noted, one of the first tasks as Chief Digital Officer was to create the 90-day report, which was perhaps at the time a daunting concept. How do you possibly understand the scope and breadth of everything already happening digitally and all the opportunities across a city as complex as New York City? And it ended up being, I think it was critical to all of our success, you know, everything we were able to accomplish. And it's a tool that I've taken with me through my career, and I can't advocate enough for it. And what we did was, thanks to your leadership, Katherine, was we went to our colleagues and our partners, both inside government and outside, to say, what are you most proud of, so that we can shine a light on it to show we're not just here to say we have all the ideas on how to make this better. And how do you measure success, and how can we help make your job easier? And so we made it very clear we were aligning them with their KPIs, and that our goal was to further those goals. And of course, in the process, you learn so much. You understand who's really already a champion within their agencies and just needs to be, or departments, and just needs to be supported and given a space where they can try new things. And you get fantastic ideas, both on the big picture, incredibly ambitious projects, but also low-hanging fruit. Here's what we can do first. And here's how we can, most importantly, make our partners look good, make our colleagues look good. So we were able to highlight what was working, double down on that, and help other agencies to leverage those same tools, and also identify what there was a lot of consensus around we needed to advance. And the digital roadmap was a document that really became our guide over the next 3 years, the final 3 years of the Bloomberg administration, and was also helpful for our own focus. So if it wasn't in the roadmap, unless there was a strong, compelling strategic reason, we would continue to stay focused on what was there to make sure that we had that follow through. So highly encourage it, and it was incredibly valuable.
But I remember even in subsequent years that the agencies actually came back to you in advance of the publication of your report and asked to be included in the roadmap. So I think that it was very telling that you were so inclusive and were creating that sense of community and building that trust early on.
Yes, and I think that also speaks to how initially it was this unknown quantity, it was this new thing where there was perhaps some apprehension, but once everyone saw this, the roadmap is actually a platform for celebrating what government is doing well, everybody wanted to be a part of it, and it was a great way of building buy-in and really gaining the trust of the group. But on a broader scale, what it was doing was shifting the culture and saying, this is something we celebrate innovation in government.
Well, I think all three of us can understand and appreciate a shift in culture, because all of us came from the private sector and we ended up working in government. And Roberta, I remember shortly after I met you in Milan, when we started doing our work with Mayor Sala, you talked about making the transition from Microsoft back to your home city, working with the city government in Milan and feeling like a little bit of an outsider, and the challenge of becoming an insider was so important. So some reflections on those early days.
Yes, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this interesting debate. It's an honor for me to share with you some comments from Milano, from Italy. And you are right, Katherine. When I came from Microsoft, and at that time I was working abroad, so I was totally immersed into a private sector and an international company with different logics and different skills and different processes and so on. Coming to a public administration, in one sense, terrified me, because I was not sure to be ready to face the issues that the public sector was asking. On the other side, I was confident on my skills, so I decided to face the new challenge, considering this new role as I was in a big organization, without focusing that this was a public administration, because I was deeply convinced that technology should be considered an enabler that helps people to live better. So I wanted to develop the digital transformation plan for the city of Milan as I was in any other kind of company. And so I decided to have this vision for the plan, which is technology at the service of citizens. So the digital should be a kind of tool based on a human-centric vision to make people live a better life. And with this view, yeah.
No, I was going to say, and you certainly were, at the heart of it. Italy was at the epicenter of the pandemic last year. Tell us about some of the ways that you found useful to get critical information out to constituents and businesses at such a critical time.
Yeah, as you know, as everybody knows, we were not prepared. Nobody was prepared to face a pandemic. At the very beginning of it, more or less 1 year ago, we couldn't have even imagined what would happen later. But what we did was to leverage the infrastructure and that technology that we had prepared in the 4 previous years. And so we were not prepared to face a pandemic, but we were prepared to use our technology and our infrastructure to face any challenge. And so, for example, we based our strategy to do something for the people in this such horrible time, leveraging the data we had. So I was so happy that the first project that we developed at the very beginning of the mandate was an interoperability plan. So we had a huge amount of data, but we were able to select the data through technology to develop services to our citizens. And this was crucial because 4 years ago, we couldn't have done half of the services that we were able to deliver. And so we used the data as our engine to develop new services, to help people in crisis, to support the urgency and emergency, to understand which part of the city were the hottest, where we had to intervene immediately. So we really used the infrastructure we had built as our main tool.
And Rachel, you, as Executive Director of Transit Innovation Partnership in New York City, during the pandemic, you've done a lot of work with the MTA and the New York City subway system. Can you give us some examples of how you use technology to deal with that challenge and to reassure people to get back on the trains and buses?
Yes, absolutely. And, I completely agree with Roberta's notes about points about interoperability. And I think back to when at the City of New York during Hurricane Irene and Hurricane Sandy, the information becomes critical. And it becomes very clear that digital infrastructure is critical infrastructure. And websites are not just a place to put a press release, but it's a place to find out if you're in an evacuation zone or how to get a vaccine, how to get life-saving information. So we certainly saw this at the MTA. Thankfully, they have a fantastic team that we work closely with. And what's interesting is that many of our in-flight projects were able to pivot and serve unique needs. So for example, when the MTA announced that they would be disinfecting the subways overnight and closing them between the hours of 1 a.m. and 5 p.m. to make the subway system safer and cleaner and healthier, we had a company that we worked with through the Transit Tech Lab, our accelerator called Remix, which was able to rapidly redesign bus networks and bus routes to make sure that essential workers could get to where they needed to go at hospitals and pharmacies and nursing homes. This is something that previously could have taken weeks, and they did it in a matter of days. When the MTA started working with Remix, they never imagined that a planning tool would be critical in an emergency, but we see these examples across the board. Another project that had an unexpected benefit was the launch of the live subway map. And we all know about maps, and maps are such important digital tools for connecting people, and they're very powerful platforms in many different ways. At the MTA, anytime you hold up a paper subway map, it's instantly out of date because there are so many service changes, both planned and unexpected. And what the MTA wanted was a map that continuously redrew based on all of the changes. This was incredibly complex, and we were thrilled to have Work & Co., which is a Brooklyn-based design firm, build it completely pro bono. And we never anticipated that it would be critical during an emergency, and it was, because now what individuals can use the map, which is at map.mta.info, to see exactly when their next train at the subway station near them will arrive. It creates a lot less stress and anxiety about waiting around or crowding conditions. And for people who have accessibility needs, it provides information on where there are active elevators and escalators. We're really just at the beginning, and it's going to continue to evolve. So that's some of what we've seen there, and we of course couldn't do any of this without the phenomenal leadership at the MTA.
Roberta, STEM in the city has been a passion project for you for years, and really educating the next generation is critical and front of mind for you. you have really tried to reach out to young women and young girls in schools. Tell us a little bit about what your hope is for the next generation of women entrepreneurs in technology in Italy and beyond.
Okay. Yeah, I have been working in the tech sector for nearly 30 years. And I have observed that unfortunately, there are few girls and few women. And so I think that this is a huge problem that we have to face in any way we could, and from all the different perspectives. STEM in the City is a project driven by Municipality of Milan to share the digital culture, and especially to invite and push, let me say, girls into STEM studies, because digital skills can be a real passport for them, for their future. In a world that is accelerating digitization and innovation, we can't think that any youth might survive without digital skills, and especially girls, because we need girls with high-level skills in technology, in innovation, in science, in all the STEM studies. And I think that during the past 12 months, we really understood that. And so working with a very large group of partners, both private and public, different entities, NGO, association, foundation, university. We have worked during the past 4 years to organize something big that can offer to our youth a wide agenda of trainings, debates, conferences, different ways to share with them the value of digital skills. And of course, many training courses. And this year, our main theme will be sustainability. And so our challenge, and I cross fingers, is to plant a tree for every single girl that will attend our courses. So we hope to leave to the city, STEM in the City forest, let me say. So the wood for STEM in the City, together with universities helping us, in order to also leave the city with a tangible sign of our work. In the past 4 years, we engaged about 30,000 youth. I really hope that this year will even go farther.
Oh, that's a lot of trees. So Milan is going to be looking very green and very beautiful. Rachel, empowering women and young women in the tech space has clearly been a passion of yours for years. And now you have 3 young children of your own, so the future is important. How are some of your current initiatives supporting and elevating the next generation?
Absolutely. And I think we all know that investing in more women in technology. I'd also add that women in transportation, there's even fewer women in transportation than I've seen in technology, as well as all manner of diversity is absolutely critical, because if we want to make these sectors more successful, more empathetic, more mission driven, this is key that we represent all perspectives. So I think back to both some of our work at the City of New York, for example, the Made in New York media campaign, where we were highlighting the diversity of founders in New York City. You can't, the image of what's possible is very important. And in that campaign, so that people are aware, we took photographs of the incredibly wonderful, diverse teams in New York who are leading tech companies, and they ran all across the city, especially in the subways, where young girls going to school could see them and say, hey, that could be a career for me. So I think that representation is key. We also launched the brilliant idea of the map to New York, which showed where the tech sector was. And I'd add to that, some of the initiatives that we're doing now at the MTA. The other reason this is important is, at least in New York, we're seeing a lot of employees are retiring who have been at the organization for 30 years, who have incredible institutional knowledge, and we really need to invest in the next generation to ensure that we have phenomenal people who are filling those very hard to fill shoes. So with the MTA, we were able to build on another wonderful Bloomberg institution, which is the P-Tech schools, the high schools that run for 6 years, and the students graduate with a free associate's degree. There was a school close to the MTA called City Poly that didn't have an industry partner, and we paired the MTA with City Poly. So those students are going to learn all of their high school courses through the lens of transportation, and this is a very diverse group of students. And then through the City University, CUNY, they're going to get associate's degrees and hopefully have a fast track to being employed in the MTA, which are fantastic jobs with benefits, security, et cetera. So there's a lot more work we can do. I would also say, I think there's nothing organizations can do to better show their commitment to women than to have women in positions of leadership, and then to nurture and support women as they move up through the organization.
We touched on this a little bit earlier, but just some closing thoughts from both of you. Both of you worked in the private sector, then transitioned to government. Just reflect on some of the lessons learned from the government experience, and both of you will be going on and doing different things in the future. So what are some of the important lessons that you've learned from government service that you're going to take back to the private sector, or perhaps whatever you choose to do in the months and years ahead? Roberta, why don't we start with you?
Okay, I think that something very important I got from this experience in the public sector is that when you think about technology, you always have to consider the outcome of the project you are trying to develop. So one of the strategy that we use when we want to develop something new is, this is a kind of claim, mobile first, one click. This means for us that if we consider the large population, we can't be, we can't think that all of them have a PC or a tablet or a strong connectivity, but all of them, they have a mobile in their hands. So our scope is to keep technology problems on our side and develop something very simple that can be reached with one click. This is, simplify, 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 a kind of mantra about simplification. But the most important thing is to offer technology to people through the device they are using the most. And so we don't have to think as we were people, because we have the ultimate tablet and the technology and everything. But we have to make an effort to offer technology and services as they would be able to reach. And so this is something that I can take in every sector, also in the private sector, because sometimes we do not think enough as we were, in the shoes of our citizens.
Right. And Rachel, we talked a little bit at the top of the conversation, and I've heard you say before that, trust is the critical point, whether when you're building a business, starting a business, working in government, building a sense of community. So reflect a little bit on some of those lessons learned, what you've worked at city government, the state level, now at the MTA and other not-for-profit partnerships in the city of New York. What are some of the best lessons that you've learned from leading, managing, and having these exchanges with an eclectic group of constituents?
Absolutely. And I know we're short on time, so I'll be quick, but I think I would emphasize, as Roberta said first, that, accessibility is usability. That's something, especially when it comes to universal design, the discipline of having to design tools for everybody is a huge advantage. And I credit that to Anna Packman, my former colleague at the state. And in terms of trust, the ability to be empathetic, Not only will it build your relationships, and these relationships are not just for the immediate project, but they're for the extremely long term. And all of our cities are connected, all of our people are connected, and it builds on itself. When you start to show those success stories, other people want to be a part of it, and the momentum becomes very powerful. So that kind of empathy and trust has been absolutely a joy to experience.
Thank you. So Bloomberg Associates will be releasing a new digital leadership report later this year, outlining some of the and showcasing some of the different kinds of digital leadership in America and Europe and in key cities. So stay tuned for that, and I'm sure you can find out more about it in Women and Worth. So thanks everyone for today. Enjoy the rest of the conference.